Hello everyone, this is Dave from Unplugged Woodworking, and today I'm going to show you how to cut multiple dovetails. So this is one of the boards that I'm going to be cutting. This is approximately 400 millimeters in width. So I'm going to be cutting multiple dovetails across here. This is going to be a blanket chest, so I'm going to show you the process of making one of the corners on this chest. The first step I'm going to do with the boards is I'm going to mark out for the thickness of the main piece, which is actually the same thickness of this piece. So I'm using a marking gauge. This has actually got a little knife in. If you haven't got one of these, what you could use is to use a large square. Obviously get it to the position you want it to be and just use a marking knife, you know, if you don't have one of those. But I do have one of these, so for this demonstration I'm gonna use it. Also, can I add, this is actually perfectly square to this edge, which basically means it's 90 degrees. Obviously the end grain portion is also 90 degrees, meaning it's 90 degrees this way. So if you are using something like this, you do have to make sure, you know, it's 90 degrees and also 90 degrees this way as well, or otherwise you're not going to get accurate markings with this. So for anyone that hasn't used one of these, you know, they are quite simple to use. You put it on the piece, and you just draw it along, or pull it along, push it along. I'm going to tip the board up and over to the other side. And as you can see here, it's left a knife line, or a knife wall, whatever you want to call it. So basically this is what this does, is when we're actually cutting the dovetails and we've got the shoulder portion, it's giving our marks, but it's also giving the chisel somewhere to go, rather than going on pencil lines, you know. So this is a definite line, you cannot veer from this line. So that's a good thing about doing it this way. Now we've got the shoulder line marked out, I'm going to mark out for the distance of the dovetails. So this is going to vary to what you want to do, whether you want to have a lot of dovetails or not so many dovetails. Typically when I do the dovetails, I'm pretty much like, you know, about two and a half of my fingers width-wise. So I've got a divider here. You don't have to use dividers, there's other ways to do this, but I have got dividers, so I'm going to use them and I'm going to demonstrate how I use them. So as I said, I want approximately 2.5 fingers in width. So is what you would do, you would start at one end and just work your way all the way across. So I'm here now, but if I go any more, obviously I'm not going to get another dovetail. But I don't actually like the waste that's left, so this waste would transfer over to this side, you know, and that's just too much. I don't want that. So you can either, at this point, you can either reduce the size of the dovetails or add a little bit extra to the dovetails. So when you're doing this, don't go too crazy, because obviously if you add this much, you're going to get that much to every single dovetail. So just bear that in mind. So when I do actually do this, I am actually just going to extend it ever so much and just same again, just to see where it lands. So that's a lot better for me, so I'm going to be more happier with that. So bearing in mind you're going to have it is going to come down at 80 degrees. So is what I would do once I was happy with that measurement. I'm going to I'm going to take it all the way across, but when I'm taking it across, I am actually going to push the spikes down of the dividers, just so I can basically see where the marks are. But now I've got all the marks going across, I'm going to actually start the dividers from this end. As what this does, this actually offsets, so it gives us me pin spacings. So as I'm working the way across, I'm actually getting two indentations next to each other, which is showing us where the pin portion is going to be. So I don't actually know if you can see these where I've put the pins, but the pins are there, the pin marks rather, or the indentations, so they're all the way along. Now that I've got the indentations for the markings, I'm just going to use my little square. This is a little backhoe square, combination square, really handy to have. This is one of my favourite squares. I've actually got this in my recommended tools. There'll be a link in the description if you want to check them out. Those are affiliate links, so it won't cost you any less, it won't cost you any more, but I do get a little kick out of it if you want to check those out. So basically where I've put those indentations, I'm just going to drag the pencil across to create lines. So I'm not sure if you can see these, but you should be able to see, hopefully you should be able to see all these lines going all the way across. So you know, the two lines that are close together, that's representing where the pins are going to be, and obviously the wider parts are where the tails are going to be. So now we're ready to mark out for the dovetails. So there's a number of ways you could do this. You could use something like this. This is a Paul Sellers dovetail jig. One side it's set to a specific angle, which is 80 degrees, and this side is 90 degrees. The 90 degrees is predominantly to mark your top markings out. Basically you put it on, you would square it across. So basically it's kind of like a little square. It's a neat little thing. If you want to check it out, Paul Sellers has got a video on that. Go and check him out if you haven't already. He's a very knowledgeable guy. He's been doing this for 50 plus years, I believe, so you'll learn a lot from him. I'm going to start marking them out, and I'm getting everything lined up. So I'm just going to go across and do one side of the tails first. Bearing in mind that I typically wouldn't do this like this, I would be facing the piece, but I'm trying to get everything on camera, yeah. So as you can see, I've got my lines going down there, and then as what I would do is I've obviously had it set like this, and you just turn the template around and put it down like this. As you can see, I've got all my tails marked out, and maybe if you're beginning doing this sort of thing, it might be an idea just to put a little cross on all the pin portions, and this is just going to let you know what's going to be removed. Even now sometimes I still do it. It's not too hard for me to get confused. So yeah, so sometimes I'd still do the crosses, and it just keeps us right, you know, if you worry about anything like that. So we've pretty much, that's the markings out. Another note as well, you'll notice I haven't marked out the tails at the back. There's just no point. Once you've got that line at the front and on the top, that's two planes. You can't move your saw to a third plane, so there's actually no point in putting a third line. So once you've put this in, saw in, and it gets its diagonal, its angle this way, and you also got your angle going this way. You cannot, as I've just said, you cannot change the angle after you've got it. So as I've said, it's pointless doing that. There's just no point to it. So I'm ready to cut these now. I'm going to cut them in a horizontal position. Yeah, you don't really see a lot of people doing this, or at least I don't see a lot of people doing this, but this is how I kind of prefer to do it now. I am going to be using a Japanese saw. A lot of the principles and things I'm going to be saying, it's still going to be the same kind of thing with a Western style saw. Some of the things I'm going to be pointing out. Yeah, these are really good. At the same time, they're not the be all end all. So if you've got a good dovetail, Western style dovetailing saw, that's all you need. You don't have to have something like this. This is just my preferred preference. When I'm starting, I'm obviously starting on the corner. This is going to be the outside of the blanket chest, so this would be the outside of your dovetail. So I am starting on the corner. Something to point out, I'm not too interested in, you know, if I screw up this way, or you know, if I'm not on this line, that's not too much of an interest to us at the moment. Of course I am going to try and stay on that line, but my main concern is going to be this line here. This is going to be the obviously 90 degrees, so that's my main concern. As I said, I'm not too bothered about me laying this way at the moment, although I am going to try and stick to it very closely. This can be, obviously, this line can be retraced when I do the pins, so it's not critical, but this line is critical. You do have to make sure this is 90 degrees, or otherwise when you are fitting the pins, you know, if it's kind of running like that, you're going to see it when you put the joint together, and that's something you don't really want. So when I'm doing it, obviously you can see I'm starting on the corner. But as I do it, I'm kind of rolling up and then I'm rolling down. So is what that's allowing us to do. It's allowing us to track the line going down, and it's allowing us to track the line going across. So we're going to move on to the next one. Same again on the corner. Just track your lines. I'm going to create a knife valley, and this is just going to be for my chisel to rest in after I've used the coping saw. So just set yourself back a little bit, and like so. And you just work your way all the way across, and this is only going to be on the pin section, because obviously we're going to be removing the pin section. This is obviously the tail section we're cutting first. Take a saw, take it dead in the centre, so you've got your curve running down. You put your coping saw in, and because the curve is a little bit bigger than the one off the dovetailing saw, it gives us a bit more room to play. So So you've removed one half, adjust your coping saw, and you can get the second half. So now I'm just going to remove these two outer pieces, and as what I'm going to do, I'm just going to get my knife into the already scored piece and just take my line across with a knife. And a knife valley. Just remove any excess material. And I'm ready to take this down with a saw. Once I've removed the section, I just use a sharp chisel and pare it down to my lines. I've removed all the waste with the coping saw, and I'm just going to finish these shoulders up with a 1/2 inch chisel. The chisel you use, it may vary. This is just what's going to fit inside of the waist area for me. I couldn't use anything big. I could use something smaller, but this is just right for the area. So when I'm doing this, I always start on the inside, and I'll remove half of the material, half the way down the thickness of the material. I turn the board over and I remove the other half of the material, and then I basically just blend it in with the chisel, you know, if there's any sort of belly in the middle. I find doing it this way, it's a lot safer. It's the same again. If you go halfway down, you have got material that's going to stop you. When you turn it around and you do the other half of the removal of the material, if you're a little bit heavy-handed and your chisel does slip and you do get a tear out, a bit of a breakage on the edge of the shoulder, again, that's going to be on the inside, so it's not going to be visible to the eye unless you start looking inside of the chest or whatever you're building. Obviously you don't want to do that, but this is just the worst case scenario. I think it's good practice. It does cover up a multitude of sins, so this is how I do it. I'm just going to put the chisel into the knife wall or the knife line, valley, whatever you want to call it. And like I said, I'm going about halfway down. Just remove all the material all the way across, and obviously just halfway down, and I just make my way across. Now if you have cut this with a coping saw and you haven't got close to your line, you know, you might have about 3-4 millimeters, is what you're best doing is removing a little section like that first. If you've got too much and you take it back to your knife wall, because you've got that excess material, is what it'll actually do when you start chiseling down. The chisel will actually push itself over your knife wall, or your knife line rather, and you don't really want that, because this is going to show. So it's going to be more of an issue on the outside, but still this is good practice. You do want to be doing it on both sides. So as I said, if it's like 3-4 millimeters, you really want to basically remove that in 2 halves or 2 passes. Now we're going to start removing the rest of the material on the outside of the joint, or the outside of the board. Right now I'm just paring down because I have got a little bit of a belly in the middle. And when you're doing this, you might actually need to get into the corners as well. Which can be a little bit awkward sometimes. I have cut the tails for all 4 corners, and now I'm ready to cut the pins. So this is going to be the pin section, obviously, on this edge and on this edge. So is what I'm doing here. This is just so I can mark out for the pins. If you're doing this on a taller bench, obviously you would stick this section in the vise and just use some sort of a block or a plane to level it up so you can mark these out. But since I'm not using a tall bench, I'm using a low bench. I've got these are kind of 90-degree brackets basically. So I've got them clamped into place, and these are actually flush with the shoulder portion of the tails. Same on both sides. They're clamped to the tail portion, and they are clamped to the pin portion. I've obviously taken the time to make sure everything's lined up correctly along here. An issue if you're using oak, what I normally come up with, ironically it hasn't happened this time because I did want to show you, but you'll normally get some sort of a bone, some cupping rather, with the oak. So in this case is what you would do if the cupping was coming this way. You would actually just get a piece of wood, you would stick it on and clamp it into place, and this would actually just pull the cupping out. So it's the same with this as well, when you put it on, you can just clamp a piece underneath, or you could even use a clamp on the outside and clamp in the middle to the underside. Move the clamp as needed when you're marking out. So these aren't necessary, this is just the way I do it, but I just wanted to show you kind of what I'm doing with it. So when this is done, obviously I just turn the thing over and mark out. I'm just about to mark these out now, and I thought I would show you how I mark them out, basically what I use as a pencil. So you can see from a regular pencil it's just sharpened differently, and the reason for this is so it can get in between the tails. That's all it's for. A silly little thing like this can make all the difference, it really does. You ain't gonna get that thing in and get accurate markings, and at this point you want accurate markings. If you don't get accurate markings, your dovetails are they're just not gonna be good. They're gonna be loose. It's not gonna be good. So when you're marking these out, you actually want to get your pencil and you want to get it right into the corner, and you pretty much just work your way all the way along the tails. And as you can see, I've got all the pencil lines on the edge of the timber, so these are my guidelines now. And as what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use a square and just square the lines down. At this point, it's probably a good idea just for you to mark out the waste that's going to be removed. So these are all the tail portions that were cut in the previous piece of wood, and I'm just marking for my preference and guidance, just so I know which is the waste material to be removed. As what I like to do, I like to mark them out on the end grain as well, and then it's pretty much foolproof because sometimes I need that. I'm ready to cut the pin portions, and it's pretty much the same setup as what I was using before, other than a different bench. A point to note when you are cutting the pin portion, if you've used this technique with the pencil lines, when you are cutting the pin portions, to make sure that the pencil line's still left on. When I'm doing this, I like to get as close as possible to the pencil lines. I don't like pairing afterwards. I don't like leaving the pencil line on and then some waste. I like to just leave the pencil line on. It just creates extra work. I don't like extra work. If you're not confident of doing the way I'm going to show it, it might be wise for you to leave that little bit extra waste on. Something else to note, that when you are cutting the pins, if you're doing it the way I've done it, if you've done the tails first and now you're doing the pins, when I cut the tails, I said I wasn't too bothered about the angle going this way, but I was more concerned about the squareness on the end grain. Whereas when you're cutting the pins, you've got to make sure you're accurate on your angles going this way and also your angles going down towards the floor. They've got to be 100% on both directions. When you start doing this, make sure you identify the waist side of the line. So before I said you must leave the line on, you're going to get nice tight dovetails when you do this. So is what a lot of people do. I'm not sure if you can see this properly on the camera. They'll actually go on to the line, but they'll be on the pin side. So the line's left on the waist side, but you don't want this. You want to be over to this side so that the pencil line's left on for the pin portion. A lot of people do this, and then when they put the thing together, everything's loose. So just for your preference, if you're a bit of a beginner doing this, just make sure that you identify the waist section. So this is the waist section, so there should be no pencil lines on this section that you remove other than the cross you've put on it to identify it as waist. So I started at the top, I've put a curve in the end grain, and now I'm going to start tilting the saw diagonally down towards the ground, and this is just to help us track the vertical square line. Now that I've got my curve going this way and I've got my curve going down, I can actually start tipping the saw and cutting down towards my shoulder line. I did actually put the shoulder line in exactly the same way as what I've done the tail shoulder line. Yeah, I've just done this off camera. You probably cannot see this, but I can just see me line, and that's what you're aiming for. You must always have that pencil line on. If the pencil line's not present after you've cut it, it means this particular pin is going to be loose. It's not the end of the world, but you know, you probably can fix it, but that's what you want to be aiming for that pencil line to always be left on. If the pencil line's always left on, you're going to have really good results every time. I've cut all the pin sections now, and off camera I've just created a knife valley all the way along. That's just for my chisel, just exactly the same way I've done the pins, the tails. And same again, I'm just going to create a curve. And then I'm just going to remove the material. It's exactly the same process. Point to make here, don't forget to tilt your coping saw the same angle as the pins, otherwise you're going to cut into the pin. It's very easily done, especially for a beginner, so please bear it in mind when you're doing it. I've removed some of the waste with a coping saw, and now I've just got to clean the shoulders up. It's pretty much the same again, other than the fact that you will have to angle the chisel like so on both sides, and that's just to follow the angle of the pins. Same again, I'm going to be starting from the inside, turning the thing over and then finishing up from the outside. Again, this is just to protect it in case there's any mistakes or anything like that, which I explained earlier on in the video. So as what I like to do, I like to get the chisel in a little bit, just so it's not going to move about, and then I'll just angle it. And right now I'm just removing some excess because I'm not very close to my shoulder line, so I have to remove you know, a little bit before I can actually go fully up to the shoulder line. So I'm going to go to the shoulder line now. Just angle the chisel. And it's the same again, I'm going to roughly go halfway down. Now I would actually go all the way along on the back side, but for filming purposes I'm going to complete this one. So same again, I'm just going to remove a little bit before I go up to the shoulder. Now I'm up to the shoulder now, so let the chisel get itself in, and then I'm going to angle it. And same on the other side. I'm just going to clean the corners up a little bit. Now there is a bit of a belly in this shoulder, so it's exactly the same principle as what I was using on the tails. I've removed all the material on the pin section now, cleaned up the shoulders obviously. Now I'm ready to basically fit the joints. So I'm just going to use my chisel, and I'm going to come about a quarter of the way down from the top, and I'm just going to put a little chamfer on like that on both sides. Make sure you don't come all the way to the top, because if you come all the way to the top, when you put the joint together, you're going to see that. If you have actually left an overhang as well, take that into consideration. So when I'm doing this, you'll notice I'm not actually taking it from the top. I'm coming down a little way from the top, and I'm not actually going to the outside. Same again, I'm coming in like about 2 to 3 millimeters from the inside. So I'm not bothered about coming out this side, because this side's not going to be seen. So I'm just taking a little off. And that's pretty much it. So I've just turned this over, and I'm just going to work my way along because I haven't been able to get it all the way down. and as you can see, the dovetails are pretty good. I did have a little whoopsie here, as you can see. That's me being a little bit careless with a chisel when I was cutting the tails and removing the material for the shoulders. So yeah, be careful with the chisels because it will leave an indentation, as you can see. That can be filled, it's not a big issue. If you like what you've seen, don't forget to give us a thumbs up, leave a comment, let us know what you all think, let us know what you want to see next, and until the next time, I'll catch you guys later.